Good morning. Morning from California. Yes, welcome to the final class of Meditation 101. To all of you who've participated, thank you for helping me with this experiment, because indeed it has been, and it's been a very pleasant one and a surprising one. And a special thanks to the people in Asia and Australia who are in the middle of the night, who are willing to stay awake or get up really, really early and participate. Let's have a moment of silence before we start. Okay, and let's just set our intention as we do at the beginning of class. Our motivation, which is we are meditating, yes, for ourselves and for whatever benefit that brings in terms of being better able to deal with our thoughts and emotions, whatever benefit it brings to our body, calming our, calming our body or giving us better sleep or lowering our blood pressure, all things that I've heard can be a byproduct of meditation, but taking it further and dedicating that benefit and wishing that benefit to all beings. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. You know, we say this also as a aspect of acknowledging interdependence, which is the way things are, really. I mean, that's just reality. I mean, you were raised by parents or guardians or something as babies, and if you weren't, you wouldn't have survived being an infant. Even today, I mean, look at how much our lives are dependent on others all the time. Our education, our health, our homes, things are built by other people. Our cars are built and maintained by other people so we can get to the hospital if we need emergency care, where doctors and nurses and people could take care of us and administer us medication that scientists develop and make, and on and on and on and on. The world is life, and the world is interdependent. So we acknowledge that by saying that prayer, and that we are motivated by interdependence as well, and honoring that. So this is the last class of 101. We will do a review, but going forward, because we will go forward, we won't be reviewing basic techniques anymore. Those will exist on IGTV if you need to go back and refresh yourselves, but we're going to move on because you guys are so dedicated and consistent. I think most of you are really, really the same people coming every week, which is fantastic. Just a couple of things from my point of view. Listen, the irony of me teaching this is not lost. Many of you know me from character Sopranos, and I played very violent, drug addicted, insane, psychotic character and things like that. And now we're sitting, meditating together. I mean, it's worthy of a comedic sketch on Saturday Night Live or something like that. But somehow I've ended up here. I post a lot about Buddhism, and people have responded and asked me a lot of questions and asked about meditation. And as a practitioner, Buddhism, if people ask for those things, I do feel obligated to give it if I am able to. So that's why I'm here. I mean, it was not my intention to be a teacher of meditation, but you guys kind of made that happen. So I blame you. I put all the blame on you. How's that? And I'm a student like you all are. I'm a teacher by default here, you know, and I'm basically just passing on what I've been taught, but I am a student with uh we will go forward talking about Buddhism, maybe which involves a certain amount of ethical discipline and behavior, and I am as you know, conflicted and, you know, possessed by negative emotions as you all are, and, you know, full of faults and defects like you all. There are lots of really, really great, you know, trained masters of Buddhism, you know, really, really realized lamas who are teaching in the world. If you go to my stories, I post teachings from great Tibetan Buddhist lamas, sometimes not Tibetan Buddhists, but other teachers. Some are alive, some are not, some have books, some don't, but find out if you're inspired. They can teach you infinitely more than I can. But that doesn't mean sitting together, all of us, discussing these things, answering questions together that we all have. That doesn't mean that can't be a benefit, nor, you know, but I look at this as kind of a workshop that we're all in together more than me really teaching you. Although whatever I've learned, I try to pass on. So let's meditate with that in mind. Last time I'm going to go through the technique. Posture, that's where we start. Posture, straight back, not erect, not rigid, seated on the floor, on a cushion, in a chair, laying down if that's the only thing you can do, depending on certain, you know, physical conditions and limitations or whatever. The recommended is sitting on a cushion on the floor. Chair is okay. If you're in a chair, have your hips level or above your knees and your back straight. If you're on the floor, some people find it, I do, more comfortable to be on a cushion a little bit, have your hips a little bit above your knees. I have one leg crossed over the other. You could do it like this, whatever's comfortable, you know. Hands, palm to the back of the hand, curved with the thumbs touching in the lap, or like this, or like this, or like this. Some people do to the ring finger. You can adjust during the meditation. Don't feel locked into it. You know, should be comfortable. There should be a simplicity to this, not a rigidity. Basically, we're just sitting doing nothing. There's nothing more simple than that at basic, right? So the neck, a little bit, you know, chin down a little bit, should be comfortable. Your teeth should be open. Your mouth can be either open or lightly closed, but the jaw shouldn't be rigid or shut. The tongue right behind the teeth, where the roof of the mouth meets your top teeth. Eyes. My tradition has eyes open. You can do it with your eyes closed. I prefer eyes open because it's more of a natural transition to bringing this kind of awareness into life, daily life. If your eyes are open, the gaze is not, you know, like staring intensely at something, nor is it out of focus, spacing out kind of. It's relaxed gaze, fixed on something. It could be the wall, it could be a view, it could be something of inspiration, like a photograph, like a flower, a candle. You know, maybe I'll go into later. You should create an environment that's inspiring to you, that makes you want to sit in. You can light incense, you could light a candle, you can make an offering of water or fruit or a flower to Buddhas, you know, whatever you like, whatever you feel really makes it special, you know, because that'll train your mind to know that this place and this time is dedicated towards something higher than just our daily, mundane, self-absorbed existence that we all kind of get sucked into from time to time, a lot of the time. So that's the posture. We were talking also about thinking of it as taking. There's a lot of dignity, there's a lot of self-respect, a lot of basic sanity in taking this seat, taking responsibility for your own development and path of enlightenment and spiritual journey and evolution. It's a big deal. Next, we go to the breath through the nose. If you can't do it through the nose, through the mouth. Relaxed breath, not a deep. You may find during the course of the session you need a big gulp. Take a deep breath, but stick to relaxed, normal breathing, not short, not long. Be aware of where it goes in and out, where your nostrils kind of meet the top, between your lip and your nostrils. Focus on that. The breath is our anchor in the practice. When we find ourselves thinking, which we will, as we've learned, we go back to the breath. That's our anchor. We use the imagery of a sky as mind. Clear, unstained, limitless, vast. That's the sky. That's our mind. The thoughts that come and the emotions are clouds or storms that come out, emerge from the sky, and dissipate back into it. So the practice is, as we focus on our breath, we will start thinking, because that's what the mind does. And the whole practice is to become aware that we're thinking and catch ourselves thinking. And when we do, we don't judge, we don't shun, we don't try to push away, we don't follow, we don't say bad or good, we don't say, oh, I'm thinking, this is not good meditation. That's not what we do. We just acknowledge it. Oh, I'm thinking. Back to the breath. Almost imagining that thought dissipating back into the sky, and then another thought will come. That is the practice. That is that is the practice that we're doing here. That is practice of meditation. And you will notice that those thoughts will dissipate. And you do a 10-minute session, whatever thought comes up after 10 minutes is probably not the thought you had coming up in the first minute anyway. So that is our technique. Now we will meditate. That is the last time I'm going to teach you the technique. You're all experts by now, so it doesn't really matter. Let's do 15 minutes. You all passed the final exam, by the way. The final exam was showing up for today, so congratulations. 15 minutes meditation starting now. Okay. Excelente. We're going to do a little experiment. We're going to take a break, like 2 minutes. But on that break, I want you to get up if you can, if you're able to. Move around. Do something more physical than mental. Mental, I mean like checking emails or making a phone call or talking to someone else. I mean something physical like wash your face, go to the bathroom, drink a glass of water, stretch, whatever it is. But stay in the meditation. Stay in the practice and the technique of recognizing the thought and going back to the breath. Stay with the breath. I didn't really time that, but you get the picture. That's if we could start to live our lives more like that, we'll notice a lot of improvement in dealing with the difficult and more negative emotions, without a doubt. So I'm going to do a short reading. This is from a book called The Path is the Goal by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who has lots of amazing books. I recommend him highly. He's talking about shamatha meditation, which is basically what we're doing, calm abiding meditation. Is the vanguard practice for developing our mindfulness. I would like to call your attention to this term, mindfulness. Generally, when we talk about mindfulness, it has to do with a warning sign, like the label on your cigarette package where the Surgeon General tells you this is dangerous to your health. Beware of this, be mindful of this. But here, mindfulness is not connected with a warning. In fact, it is regarded as more of a welcoming gesture. You could be fully mindful. Mindfulness means that you could be a wholesome person, a completely wholesome person. Rather than that, you should not be doing this or that. Mindfulness here does not mean that you should look this way or that way so you can be cured of your infamous problems, whatever they are, your problems of being mindless. Maybe you think like this. You're a highly distracted person. You have problems with your attention span. You can't sit still for 5 minutes or 1 minute, and you should control yourself. Everyone who practices meditation begins as a naughty boy or naughty girl who has to learn to control themselves. They should learn to pay attention to the desk, their notebook, their teacher's blackboard. That is the attitude usually connected with the idea of mindfulness, but the approach here has nothing to do with going back to school, and mindfulness has nothing to do with your attention span, as you experienced in school or at all. This is an entirely new angle, a new approach, a development of peace, harmony, and openness. The practice of meditation in the form of shamatha at the beginner's level is simply being. It is bare attention that has nothing to do with a warning. It is just simply being and keeping a watchful eye completely and properly. There are traditional disciplines and techniques for that, mindfulness techniques, but it is very difficult actually to explain the nature of mindfulness. When you begin trying to develop mindfulness in the ordinary sense, a novice sense, your first flash of thought is that you're unable to do such a thing. You feel that you may not be able to accomplish what you want to do. You feel threatened. At the same time, you feel very romantic. I am getting into this new discipline, which is a unique and very powerful thing for me to do. I feel joyous, contemplative, monkish, or nunnish. I feel a sense of renunciation, which is very romantic. And then the actual practice begins. The instructors tell you how to handle your mind and your body and your awareness and so on. And in practicing under these circumstances, you feel like a heavily loaded pack donkey trying to struggle across a highly polished stream of ice. You can't grip it with your hooves and you have a heavy load on your back. At the same time, people are hitting you from behind and you feel inadequate and embarrassed. Every beginning meditator feels like an adolescent donkey, heavily loaded and not knowing how to deal with slippery ice. Even when you're introduced to various techniques that are supposed to help you, you still feel the same thing, that you're dealing with a foreign element and you're not able to deal with it properly. But you feel that you should at least show your faith and bravery, show that you are willing to go through the ordeal of the training, the challenge of the discipline. The problem here is not so much that you are uncertain how to practice, but that you haven't identified the teachings as personal experience. The teachings are still regarded as a foreign element coming into your system. You feel you have to do your best with that sense of foreignness, which makes you a clumsy young donkey. The young donkey is being hassled by his master a great deal, and he is already used to carrying a heavy load and to being hit every time there's a hesitation. In that picture, the master becomes an external entity rather than the donkey's own conviction. A lot of the problems that come up in the practice of meditation have to do with a fear of foreignness, a sense that you are unable to relate with the teachings as part of your basic being. The practice of shamatha meditation is one of the most basic practices for becoming a well-trained person. Without that, you cannot even take a step toward personal understanding of true Dharma. And Dharma at this point is no myth. We know this practice and technique was devised by the Buddha himself. We know that he went through the same experiential process. Therefore, we can follow his example. So that kind of leads into where we're going to go with the next class, which starts next week, which will start to touch on some aspects of Buddha Dharma, particularly dealing with the mind, which is what we're doing here in Meditation 101. And we're going to explore that and deal with that even on a deeper level. So with that, let's answer some questions, take some questions, and then meditate some more. Miguel says, what would you attribute your biggest accomplishment when it comes to your devotion to Buddhism? Probably right now, what we're doing here today. Miguel again says, what advice would you give to a confused 20-year-old about life, career, etc.? Same answer, what we're doing right now. Same question, same person, same answer. Heather says, how do you know if you're experiencing clarity of the mind? I'm getting good at observing thoughts, but not sure about what comes after that. That's a really good question. The fact that you're getting good at observing thoughts is the big takeaway. Because what that means is now there's a separation between thinking the thought and the mind observing the thought. Because usually there's not a separation. You are the thought. The thought is what's dominating you. The thought is your awareness. The thought takes you where it wants to take you. The thought has a momentum that takes you different places. When you're becoming aware of the thought, there's the mindfulness aspect of mind that is in operation, which is a separate entity from the thought. So I would just say the fact that you're becoming aware of the thought is a sign that you're doing the right thing, and just continue that way. You know, when you're aware of the thought and you go back to the breath, use the image. You know, we're talking about a very subtle concept, or a very subtle reality, not just a concept, but a subtle reality. You know, the clarity of mind that is something, you know, that essence of mind and nature of mind and spaciousness of mind. It's not something that we're, you know, necessarily used to. And it's not a concept that's easy to describe, communicate, and share and share notes on. So I am very encouraged that you are becoming aware of your thoughts. That's the key. That means you're doing something right. So when you are becoming aware, you go back to the breath and use that image. I think that image will kind of start to, the image of the sky and the clarity of that will start to connect. Because what we're talking about is the space in between thoughts, right? Because usually the thoughts have a chain. One thought leads to the next. And I've demonstrated a little bit, like, you know, I'm talking into a microphone here. This microphone, I make sure it's on, and it's a red light. And the red light on my car, the tail light is broken, so I got to get fixed. But my mechanic's closed today because my mechanic's been sick and he's in the I should go to the hospital. Now, I went from my microphone to the hospital in seconds. That's how we live our life. That running chain of thought that just goes and goes and goes. Becoming aware breaks that chain. And in between the links of that chain is the clarity and nature of mind. So even if you're not so aware that that's what it is, those gaps between thoughts are those clarities. The fact that are the clarity of mind. The fact that you're recognizing thinking means you are interrupting that chain. And you just have to keep doing it. The more you do it, the more clarity you'll get. Joe says, what do you do if you feel too distracted to meditate? How do you break those thoughts? You will be distracted. That's why we're meditating. You know what I mean? You just have to keep to the technique. That's how you break the thoughts. That's how you deal with distraction. Back to the breath, recognize your thinking. You know, the same techniques apply. There's no shortcut, you know. And it takes practice, and it takes consistency. I mean, you do this once a month, you're not going to make much progress. You do it a couple of times a week, you'll start to make progress. Ilya says, does it matter how I'm seated or positioned, or is it just about feeling comfortable? It helps if the back is straight. Number one, it creates a physical quality of alertness, which is because we want to be alert. We don't want to be like intensely concentrated, nor do we want to be too relaxed, slouching, spaced out, kind of lazy. There's also the spinal cord, which is, the kind of nerve central of the body. And there's, in Tibetan Buddhism, there's subtle channels, in Chinese medicine as well, Eastern medicine, there's the subtle channels of the body that run next to the spinal cord, those subtle energetic channels. And we're working with those subtle energies when you're working with the mind. So it does help to have the straight back. Matthew says, when one connects to the image of the sky, is it looking up at the sky or out upon a sky, if that makes sense? I think it's what works for you. What's easier? What comes more natural? Either one is fine as long as it's a sky. Andre says, my foot fell asleep after a session this long, which is uncomfortable. Is it okay to split it up in shorter sessions? For example, 3 sessions with 5 minutes each. Thank you for doing what you do. Love from Norway. Yeah, you can break it up. You can also like, stretch your foot out during the session and try to stay with the meditation, or massage your foot or whatever, shake it out and keep the practice going. That's totally fine too. Or it's okay to split it up. Short sessions are great. Short sessions on a consistent basis are fantastic. Jenny says, would Buddhism be more of a state of being than a religion? Very good question. Buddhism is not a theistic religion. The Buddha was not a god, is not treated as a god. There's no creator god in Buddhism, or omniscient god in Buddhism. Some people look at it more as a philosophy and a way of looking at reality and the mind, the self, rather than a set of dogmatic beliefs that one has to adopt. But I think it's good for you to find out for yourself, I practice in the Tibetan tradition. I recommend that because that's what I know. I don't recommend it because I think it's better than other traditions or other religions for that matter, or other philosophies. I recommend it because that's what I know and I've gotten benefit from it. His Holiness Dalai Lama yesterday was doing a interfaith dialogue with a professor of Islam, I think at an Islamic university in Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken. He does a lot of those interfaith dialogues and speaks about, respecting all religions. I think ultimately all religions, have the same intention. I talk about Tibetan Buddhism because that's what I practice and that's what I know, and that's what I have to, offer, recommendations in those terms. But you can read some quotes. Look up Albert Einstein on Buddhism. He had some very interesting things to say about Buddhism. Also, the Dalai Lama has also done some dialogues with scientists, particularly physicists, because a lot of concepts, the cosmology and physical science and Buddhism have a lot of parallels and match up really well, especially like quantum physics and things like that. We may get into some of that stuff later on in the next class. Lila says, would you consider Buddhism something that everyone should live by? Is it much different from being compassionate and generous? I would not suggest, I would not suggest something for everybody on the planet. I just talk about it, something that's worked for me, that I appreciate, that I've gotten a lot out of. And if people are interested and I can point them in that direction, I do. I would never say everyone should do this or that. I think people should do what works for them. Um, isn't much different from being compassionate and generous. Those are certainly compassion, generosity are qualities that Buddhism encourages you to develop and cultivate. This is my first time, says Thomas. Is it easy to learn the techniques or does it take a lot of practice? Well, you can answer that question now since you've you just practiced the techniques. That's up to you to answer. Michael says, do you recommend music sometimes? If so, any playlist? I don't meditate with music and I never have. I don't not recommend it, nor do I recommend it. Julia says, my good friend Julia, can I keep my Catholic beliefs and still practice Buddhism? I think you can. I think you can definitely keep your Catholic beliefs, practice meditation, and learn about Buddhism and see how it applies. You can't technically be a Buddhist and a Catholic at the same time, from what I understand. Technically, to be a Buddhist, technically you have to take a certain refuge vow, basically, where you're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Sangha being the congregation, if you will, a community. And that means you're a Buddhist. But certainly, if Catholicism is what is in your heart and you want to stay a Catholic and practice that, but you like some Buddhist philosophies and meditation techniques, why not? Okay. Let's meditate again. We're just going to do 5 minutes right now because some people have to leave when the hour's up. We'll do another 5 minutes and then we'll do some more questions. Timer, 5 minutes. So this is a shorter session than we did before. See what the difference is, the different qualities to the short session and the long session. If it's, if there's any difference. 5 minutes. Great. All right. All right, so we'll do a few more questions. Frankie says, instead of a blue sky, can you look at a night sky? I would say a blue sky is better because there's a luminous quality to the mind. Luminous means, light. Luminous means, that potentiality of everything, really, because all our perception comes through the mind. How we interact, perceive the world, all comes through that. So there's a luminous, and it's not just a completely empty, void clarity, right? There's almost a knowing quality to the mind. So what I mean by that is when we do get to deeper states of meditation, right? When the thoughts really settle for, a little bit longer, there's a wisdom aspect to that clarity. There's a knowing aspect to that clarity. It's not just a vegetative state or a unconscious state. And in Buddhism, they talk about the luminous quality of the mind. And luminous obviously comes from, it deals with light. So I would say being the night sky is the absence of light, that it is probably not the best metaphor or representational image for the mind. Would this breath work, Gwendolyn says, would this breath work be helpful to working through panic attacks, and can it help lessen them through more practice of meditation? I would imagine yes. Although for some people, panic attacks could be this, symptoms of a deeper issue, physical, mental, that may need attention. And if they're severe and, very distressing, that it should be looked at by, somebody who's a professional in the field of mental health, physical health. There may be other things that are needed besides that. So I would say not to ignore that, or to do the meditation and breathing practices exclusive of looking into, what a professional can offer you. Nick says, I'm sure you got this question before, but how do you know if you're in a meditative state or in deep thought, or are they one and the same? Well, the deep thought is still thinking. So if you're thinking, then you have to recognize you're thinking and then go back to the breath to release the thought. That's my answer. Justin says, currently a lot of studies are looking into the connection between psychedelics and mindfulness. Obviously very controversial, but the studies do show tantalizing connections. While this may not be for everybody, what could psychedelics help as potential tools? I don't really know. I don't have that kind of experience. But I would say about meditation is, like we did before, we got up, we tried to stay with the technique of mindfulness in meditation and dealing with the thoughts and going back to the breath. I mean, you're not going to live your whole life, high on psychedelics. I mean, for most people are not. And I think that would be not the healthiest thing in the world to do, and may not be legal in many parts of the world. So there's a lot of other things involved in that. Whether or not using it under professional supervision can give you certain kind of insight, but regardless of what insight, you may in meditation practice have like what's called a peak experience, where all of a sudden you're not thinking and you're experiencing bliss and you're experiencing clarity. These are all things that happen during meditation, and they're quite common, actually. You may have already been experiencing these things. That does not mean you're going to have that all the time. And that does not mean of course, does not mean we're enlightened when we experience those things. Maybe it's just a taste, a glimpse, if you will, at what, potential there is for progress. So, I mean, me personally, I don't feel you need those things. That's just my opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own. Everyone's entitled to do what they feel necessary. And I only talk about what I've been taught and what people have recommended to me, particularly teachers of the Dharma, and that has not been. So does not mean it's not a possibility, but what I like about this practice is there's a direct relationship between doing this and bringing it into our daily lives, which is really, that's the path, Are we going to be able to interact and be better human beings and be better sisters and brothers and fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, if we start to practice, Georgia says, what if we find enlightenment through meditation and we're still a resource to hold the suffering in the world? I sometimes feel a bit detached when I meditate, but not helpful to others. I wouldn't worry about enlightenment. I would worry about meditation and focus on the practice. If you're really into, this path to find an authentic teacher of Buddhism, if that's what you're into, or whatever spiritual discipline, and follow, what they have to say, read their books, attend their teachings if you can. I think that's the path, get deeper into the path, and a lot of these questions will be answered, and you'll find ways to be helpful to others in adverse situations. Kelly asks a very simple but very profound question. How do you think meditation has helped you? It's just it has helped me deal with my thoughts and emotions so that I'm not just a slave to them, reacting to them all the time, reacting out of them, although I do sometimes. Sometimes they overwhelm, sometimes you're not in a space and you're not in, in a state of mind where you're able to tap into mindfulness in the moment. And, that's why we practice, we're not enlightened beings, we're not Buddhas, um, yet, right? At least. So what I like to say is meditation can bring us a little gap. And by gap, I mean, something happens that triggers your emotion. I use this a lot, getting cut off on the highway or something when you're driving. And immediately you feel, victimized, you feel attacked, you feel someone's wronged you, you get angry and you want to retaliate. And some people retaliate in very, very destructive, dangerous ways, like chase him, cut him off, and maybe cause an out. It's, the negative emotions that are very, very powerful can quickly lead to disastrous consequences. And I have, like all of you have experienced that, I'm sure, many, many, many times. So meditation, when you become aware of your thoughts and mindful of your thoughts and emotions, may give you that little second or split second or several second gap between, okay, I'm feeling that, how do I want to behave? Knowing that I'm angry, knowing that I'm particularly grasping or, attached to something or averse to something, greedy about something, jealous about something, knowing that, how do I want to behave? How do I want my actions to be? Because actions is where the karma begins. When we action will start. You'll take action and create karma out of action. And we talked a little bit about karma, meaning every action has a reaction. So if you're reacting out of extreme anger, you can do something that has heavy karmic repercussions, murder, hatred, anger, can result in some really disastrous consequences. So meditation and that practice and being more mindful in life can offer that gap of a little bit of time where you say, okay, back to the breath. I'm feeling that anger. You know what? Instead of chasing that guy down and cutting him off or giving him the finger, whatever it is, just let it go. Now, that does not mean becoming some passive person who's a doormat to the universe. It's not about that. It's actually just becoming really honest. And in that situation on the highway, the honest thing is really the paramount thing is safety, because driving on a highway is extremely dangerous, going at 80, 90 miles per hour. In other situations where there's certain confrontations or disputes or difficulties or someone wronging you, what meditation can offer is checking the emotion so you come out of a place of just honesty, directness, and self-respect, and respecting the other person as well. It's not about just like everything's okay, people can just do what they want. That's not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about the opposite. We're talking about being really, really, really honest and really true to ourselves. And that means self-respect, and that means, protecting ourselves as well, and not allowing us to be, disrespected or abused, and being honest about the need to draw those lines. It's a very important distinction, because we are not meditating to tune out, to space out, to just become, this vegetative state who just like are sitting and just like the world's going on around them and we're not touched by the world. No, we're actually going to be more touched by the world. You're going to become more aware. You're going to become more aware of other people's suffering and other people's humanity, and find more positive ways to interact with that. At least that's what I think. Okay, we're going to do one more question, and then we're going to dedicate. And then we're going to move on to Meditation 102 next week. Nick says, is it okay if we think of memories as we're meditating? If, listen, when you say think of memories, are you saying willfully choose to go down memory lane and look at those movies of the past and stuff like that? The point is, what you're trying to do is stick to the technique of meditation. If memories come up as thoughts, then we apply the techniques. So the trick is to recognize memories like emotion as and thought as the same thing. It's a thought. Okay, I'm thinking of when I was a kid and my dad took me to the baseball game. I'm thinking back to the breath. What we should not do is follow the memories. And just go into the reverie of the memory. Remember that time and the game was so good, and relive it, and follow it and get into the movie and the story of it. We treat memories like thoughts, recognize that we're, reminiscing, go back to the breath, treat it the same way. John says, how can we get a spouse to participate in meditation? I know my wife would benefit, but she thinks otherwise. Well, people hate to be told what to do, I've found. And people hate when you tell them this would be good for them. What's the better thing to do is to be an example. So if she sees you really committing to this practice and doing it, consistently and often, and she may even start to see a little bit of a change in you. Maybe you're becoming a little bit more calm. Maybe you're becoming a little more present. Maybe you're becoming a little more kind. So by example, I think is the best way. And I'm going to segue that into what we're going to close on here today. You've all been meditating these last few weeks. And I know it's not easy. And I'm sure lots of thoughts are flooding your meditations, and you're trying to work with them, and thoughts come. But I have a feeling all of you have experienced within all that thought and working with the thought, some degree of calm and peace. So basically what we're saying is, underneath all this thought and the busy mind, there is this basic calmness, peace, almost benevolent energy somewhere, if you will. What does that mean? Like I said, every time we sit, the thoughts may be different, the emotions, you might be angry, you might be sad, you might be jealous. One day you might be thinking about work, you might be thinking about your family, you might be thinking about the news of the day, whatever. But when we clear away, we always get to that same place. And it's a place of calm, which is a place of peace, and I think a benevolent one. So what does that say about us as human beings? And if so, how can we cultivate that more, accentuate that more? And that's what we're going to move into in the next block of classes. So I just want to thank all of you for participating in this experiment. It's been very rewarding for me. It's helped me with my practice. And for that, I'm very grateful to you all. And you will be getting info on my Instagram about the next class, which right now is going to be the same time next week. Maybe we'll break it up during this next section of different days or times, but just the next one will be the same time, same place, same day. And you're welcome to come back. Let us dedicate. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Once again, thanks a lot. This has been a great 7 weeks for me, beyond my wildest expectations, to be honest. And actually, I didn't really have expectations. It was very this whole thing took me by surprise. But in the end of the day, I'm very glad we've done this together. And thank you.